Hi everyone, welcome back to Crafting with Slavie. Today's card is a fun scene card that I put together for my niece's birthday. I was inspired, and I'm still inspired, by Maureen Simon. She just makes the most amazing cards that have such intricate scenes, and it has really inspired me, and I have mostly stuck with getting Lawn Fawn stamp and die sets so that I can mix and match them. And this is my first mix and match card, so I was super excited to get this going. I went ahead and I used several stamps from many different stamp sets. Among the ones I used were Village Shops, Butterfly Kisses, and Smooth Sailing. I also used quite a few different combinations of borders and other dies from Lawn Fawn. So the hillsides are the hillside borders, the stitched hillside borders. I've got the palm tree border, the hammock and trees. I used the magic iris along with the magic iris add-on. And to round things out, I used the Picket Fence Studios Sunbeam stencil, which is how I made my sunset, and you can kind of see it there over to the top left. This whole card came together because of this stencil. I just love it. I think it is a great stencil. It is great for scene building like this. And I actually have another version of it, which I'll use in a different video, where it's not perfectly center, it's kind of offset, and I just think it looks fantastic as well. And it's very versatile. You don't have to use it in this way. You can use it even as a moon if you wanted to get creative that way, or I would even use it for water. So it's just a really great diverse stencil. So I also picked up some post-it tape because everybody just rants and raves about how awesome it is. Let me tell you though, not great for holding my stencil down. So I went back in with some of my painter's purple tape, which is low tack, so it didn't damage my paper and it was relatively easy to peel off, but it's tack enough that it actually stuck and I didn't have to worry about it. And then I went in with, let's see, it was the mustard seed. And then I shifted the stencil so that I could just see the white parts, and I went back in with wild honey, both distressings. And then when that was all done, I removed the stencil and I went back in with squeezed lemonade to just cover up the rest of those white spots and really tie it all in together. The little arrow, I also did that in the squeezed lemonade. And the little notch there, I just finished it off with squeezed lemonade as well, so it wouldn't be so stark white when I put everything together. For the little sausage pieces, I started with the squeezed lemonade, and I learned from my previous errors when I was ink blending these. So I did all over blending kind of with the squeezed lemonade for the bits that are going to actually show through the magic iris. And then I wanted it to match the little circle and where the sun rays are as well. So I went back in with a little bit of mustard seed just on the outside of the sausage pieces so that it would kind of blend together nicely. For my palm tree tops, I used cracked pistachio, and then I went back in with pine needles with a much smaller blender brush. You can also go in with Copic markers if you have them, but since I was doing ink blending, I decided to just use ink all the way through. I then went in with brushed corduroy for all of the brown trunky coconutty pieces for the palm trees, and then I blended the edges with walnut stain right here. So wherever the palm tree kind of leaned into itself, had those little notches that you can kind of see here, that's where I blended with a little bit of the darker color. And then I just went around on the coconuts on one side and left the other one just as is. And then I did the same thing to the rest of the palm trees there on the border. And you'll notice that I'm not blending out the rest of the border. I decided that I was actually going to cut these apart because I didn't like the shape of the border, but I liked the palm trees. So I ended up using them later. Okay, for my ground pieces, I used gathered twigs, and then I went back in with ground espresso just on the bottom edges. And then when that was all done, I smooshed some gathered twigs on my media mat here, and I just did splatters with clean water that I had next to me. And I just did this for a little bit of texture. I ended up going in quite heavily. I really enjoyed the look of it. Kind of made it look like sand or hillsides, I guess. And then for the sun rays, I actually used liquid stardust from Fawn, and I really hate wasting this stuff because it's just so gorgeous. So I used up as much as possible, kind of all over the place. And when you use this stuff, make sure you let it dry. I set it off to the side to dry while I colored my little critters and stuff, and it wasn't quite dry enough, so make sure you either hit it with your heat gun or let it dry overnight. Alright, so for the coloring, I'm going to step back and let you enjoy the coloring, and I will be back for the assembly. Okie dokie. So for the sentiment, this one came from, I think it was Smooth Sailing. It just says, it's your birthday. Oh no, that was from Village Shops. And this is one of the other reasons why I really wanted to use Village Shops, because I just loved the way that it wished you a happy birthday. It's your birthday. So I heat embossed this with Ranger embossing ink, and I used the white superfine detail Ranger embossing powder, and then I heat set it with my heat gun. I did treat it with the anti-static powder tool to make sure that I didn't have any extra bits that clung onto anywhere, and I gave it a good tap on the back just to shake off any excess. Okay, and then when that was done, we can start the assembly. Now, my apologies here, I didn't realize that my camera stand was shifting, so I did the sausage piece putting together thing completely off camera, so I just cut it out. You just line it up as best that you can, and then I like to use some low tack tape to hold it in place. And then you go in with 3/16 glue dots, and you put them on the little X's on the sausage pieces that come in there. And I like to take off my tape once I attach the ring on top of the glue dots, but you can certainly leave it on until after you've put the stabilizers on. And I mentioned in my last video that I didn't have very much luck with assembling this with tape, so I'm going in with liquid glue, and I can happily say that it was a much better result with the liquid glue, for me anyway, than it was with just the tape. So you attach it where it indicates to on the back, then you attach your handle, then you put a loose ring right on top to make sure that that middle ring can keep moving. That's what moves everything. And then more glue on those little notches, hold it down. Now I could have used like a binder clip to hold it closed. I chose to just hold it tight, and then I put a heavy block over top of it when I set it off to the side. Then I also attached my little handle thingy. What do you call that? I don't even know. So I attached that. I made sure that the ring worked, which it does. Looks very pretty. I'm quite happy with it. And I trimmed off the excess. A bit more glue and the arrow. And then to attach this to the add-on, you can just slather it in glue. Not to the point where it's like seeping out the sides, of course, but glue, tape, whatever your preference is. All right, then I just wanted to make sure that everything fit properly and that all looked good, which it did. I cut my card base out of 100-pound cardstock, and I started assembling, and I realized that I actually didn't care much for the white background. It just looked kind of weird with my sunsets. So I decided to go back in with some of the Wild Honey Distress ink, and I just masked off the back side of the card, and I just went around the edges, making sure to really focus on the edges to give it that nice orange color to complement the rest of the card, and also to make sure that you see where that notch is, that was also covered in ink. And then I went ahead and placed my sun inside of where it would live. And I go back and forth It didn't want to go through the hole quite right, so I ended up lifting it up, making sure. So now I'm making sure that it actually is in the right position. That's the nice thing about liquid glue as well, is you can kind of move it around. I know you can do that with tape adhesive as well, but that is one of the things I really like about liquid glue. And from there, I attached foam tape, and I switched things up a little bit, and I double layered the foam tape just to give it enough room to do its thing. So you can see me double layering it here. And then I set this off to the side. I have a new stamp that I'm really excited about. This was the first card I got to use it on. And it's just got my website and my logo on it, so it's cool. And it's funny because I had this handmade, but the writing is shockingly similar to my own, so it kind of worked out really well. Okay, so for the hammock and trees, this is the hammock and trees. I didn't use the hammock, just the trees. I got this idea from Jennifer McGuire, I think, who has layered the palm fronds together to make a more full tree, and I just think it looks phenomenal. So I went ahead and did that. I made 4 trees, but I only ended up using 2 of them on my finished card. I then went ahead and I attached the palm fronds on the border, and at this point I knew that I was going to cut it apart, but I hadn't cut it apart yet. I waited until I started assembling my my card. So I like to kind of sort through what I have and prep what I can. So from the smooth sailing stamp set, I cut out both boats and those little critters, and I wanted the little critters on one of the boats, and I wanted the other boat inside of the magic iris. I also wanted the little critters to match the 2 critters that are sitting on the beach. So that's why I chose the bunny and the bear from Butterfly Kisses. And before I attached everything to the front of the card, I glued down the boat so that I wouldn't have to worry about it once I had the scene on top of it. And I just put glue on the back of those stabilizers. You don't want glue anywhere else to allow it to move. And for this card, I actually think I stood up to line it up. So don't be afraid to stand up to line up your cards. It makes a world of difference to make sure that everything is centered and even. Okay, then making sure that my pieces fit, because, you know, compulsively can't help myself, and attaching them with some glue. I'm making sure to leave space, so I'm just gluing along the sides and the bottom so that I can tuck things in. And first things first, I started with the boat because it's the biggest. So I wanted to make sure that it fit properly and that it made sense. And then I was just double checking to make sure that that wouldn't work, and it didn't. So I went ahead and I cut apart these palm trees. And I cut them a little bit lengthwise so I could tuck them in, which ended up working out great because then they were a little bit more stable and they didn't just come apart, and they could float a little bit in between the layers, and I didn't have to worry about it. And using these palm trees in this way was really great because it created dimension in the cards, so you could tell that they were kind of farther away, and then the bigger palm trees were towards the front of the card. All right, and I'm gonna step back and let you watch the rest of the process of me just tucking stuff in and finding a home for everything. All right, so now that everybody's mounted, I went back in. The magic iris just needed a little something extra. So I added the birds, and that's my finished card. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you again in the next one. Thank you. Bye.